Welcome to the Collective Scope podcast, where we talk to great leaders who are influencing the next generation. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Collective Scope podcast, and man, we are so excited to have Grayson Russell with us today. Now, if you don't know Grayson, you probably know him without knowing him, but he's been in some amazing films, Talladega Nights, which is probably one of my favorite films of all time. I don't know if I should say that publicly, but it was a great movie. And Diary of a Wimpy Kid, along with several other films. And I think you even have some coming out, which, yes, you know, if you want to promote those or if you can, certainly feel free to do that. But he's a part of our campus, which is the most important narrative that we can talk about today. I mean, he's a Lee University student, a senior this year, getting ready to graduate. And so move on to bigger, better things. But
so I've often said, Rob, before there were memes, there was Grayson Russell.
That's true.
Like what he said in Talladega Nights, and then as Fregley on Diary of a Wimpy Kid, like I've quoted forever. So, but I'm that old to remember those things.
I am too. But Grayson, welcome to the show.
Thank
man.
you.
We're so glad
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. This is the first podcast I've ever done. So
really?
This is cool. Yeah, this is
right.
all new experience.
Well, we knew you win, so no.
I don't know when was. What did I say that right?
When was when?
When was when?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know. Well, we're glad to have you on.
This is our third show today, so
sweet.
You might get a little bit of a loose cannon on this side of the mic.
I appreciate that.
And
I appreciate that.
Our brains are a little bit mushy because we had an incredible show last show. But anyway, so hey man, kind of tell us a little bit, because it's not always you get the opportunity to set with somebody who's doing high level Hollywood blockbuster films. You don't really get a chance to sit down with them too often. At least I haven't, and just kind of talk about their art, their craft. And so, what really got you into acting at such a young age?
I didn't mean to at all, which was the crazy thing, and that's all God, and no one will ever be able to deny that. I come from a super small town, middle of Alabama. My mom's an accountant. My dad's always done construction work. Grandparents are farmers, like nothing crazy at all. I wanted to ride bulls and be George Strait when I was a child.
Amen.
Nothing crazy like that. That was it. Started doing commercials for a guy who had gone to school with my mom, but he would use the varsity cheer squad, so that was no big thing, just selling cars. It ended up that we ran into a lady who just had a newspaper article on it. It was like, hey, you should take Grayson to this. It was an open call for an untitled Will Ferrell Adam McKay project at a high school in Birmingham. And the only reason we went was because Dad went fishing and we were bored. That was it. That was the only reason we did. We had nothing else to do. So we went, we lined up, we got there. I went, auditioned, didn't know what was going on. I just read what they told me to. And about 2 weeks later, they called Mom and said, hey, we want him to come back to North Carolina to do a callback audition. And when we had no idea, like at this point, all I had done was just local car dealership commercials. Like we would dress up like Johnny Cash and use car salesmen. Like I was like a baby William Wallace at one point.
Can we get access to those?
100%.
Like, we need to put those on.
Like so it was nothing crazy. It was super small scale stuff. And so I went in audition. They called Mom. Hey, can we have him in Charlotte in 2 weeks? And at this point, like, Mom didn't even think that this was like a real film. Like, you have to understand, we were entirely illiterate to the whole process.
Right.
We still are. Obviously don't claim to know everything whatsoever. So we go to Charlotte. I audition. We made like a family vacation out of it, like came back through Six Flags on the way back home. A couple weeks later, they called us. They said, hey, we need you in Charlotte to begin filming for this untitled Will Ferrell Adam McKay project, which at that point in time, my folks had never seen Anchorman. This was 2005. Elf had come out that Christmas, the Christmas before. So obviously, like, I was big into that, but I didn't know who Will Ferrell was. And that was the crazy part about it, is we had no idea what we were getting into. And so we went. And that was a really hard thing to do, because I had grown up super conservative, Church of God my entire life.
Right.
So had my mother. My dad was, a heathen until he met my mom, whatever. But that was the hardest part, was because we go in, we read the script, and we see all these things that are definitely do not line up with everything that I was taught and my parents were taught. And that was a huge definitely a test for us, for sure. We ended up going to Central Church of God while we were there, which is under Pastor Loran Livingston. And, you know, we were there. We had done a couple weeks of rehearsals at Silverhammer Studios in town. And I got saved, like, while we were filming Talladega Nights. We were over one of the weekends Dad was up. Came back and was like, okay, I need to kind of figure out what to do about all this, because there's a ton of different things that I have to do and that I have to say that I am not comfortable with at all. I mean, I'm 7 at the time, so what do I know? We had just finished a rehearsal, and I think we were probably about to start filming that next week, if we hadn't started filming already. And I went in and I was like, hey, Adam, do I really have to say all these things? And at that point in time, I didn't realize the titan that Adam McKay was, who was the director, that he would go on to be. I mean, everything that that Will essentially did, Adam directed. So you look at the other guys, you look at The Campaign, you look at Step Brothers, all the monumental things that Will did, especially through the early 2000s, mid-2000s up until the present, Adam was attached to it.
Sure.
I was like, hey, Mr. Adam, do I really have to say all these things? I mean, he sat up and looked me in the eyes and was like, you don't have to say anything you're not comfortable with. To the point that whenever we're working, whenever we're doing stuff on set, most of the time, Adam and Will would just yell stuff at us to say. So you're looking at Come At You Like a Spider Monkey was entirely unscripted. That wasn't in the script.
Listen, I've said that like 1,000 times this week.
That wasn't in the script. Scissor Kick You in the Back of the Head wasn't in the back of the script. I'm All Jacked Up on Mountain Dew wasn't in the script. They had to pay royalties because Coke was the sponsor of NASCAR at that point in time. So all kinds of different things. Throwing Chips War medals off the bridge, like that was all not scripted. That was them yelling stuff. But if at any point in time they yelled something profane for me to say, the whole set would lock down. No, he can't say that. We shouldn't make it. And it was very respectful. It wasn't like a downer, like, oh, well, hey, he's not. No, it was, we're not going to make him say that. And they're like, oh, we are so sorry. Like the entire cool. Upper echelon of the crew would apologize, which was the strangest thing, because I'm 7.
Yeah,
I have no idea what's going on. I'm here for a good time. Like, I was entirely illiterate what was going on.
I think that's an interesting perspective. I mean, fortunately, I was able to spend some time in California, Southern California, Hollywood. And I had the privilege to meet and talk with several different people who were currently running TV shows. I was on set of a couple of different shows, just with some people that I had an acquaintance with. And I think that's a unique perspective, because we hear so much dark about Hollywood, and I say that in quotes because it's more than just Hollywood. In fact, I think Atlanta is starting to surpass Hollywood
absolutely.
In terms of making films and television shows. But the point is, the idea of that world is very dark, and there is obviously darkness there. But the point is, there's also a lot of light, and a lot of the guys that I hung out with, not only just good people, but there are also some really strong Christian believers impacting the film industry, much like yourself. And so maybe just for a second, just kind of unpack how you lead well in that darkness, because it is. I mean, it's a different industry with a different motive and, different outcomes. But at the same time, there's some really great people working in that industry doing a lot of really good work. So tell me about that.
It's something that thankfully my mother always had to travel with me up until I turned 18. That was required. She had to be within sight or sound of me at all times. So at that point, I had done 10 films with my mom present. I've done only 2 total that she wasn't there for, and that was always something that was at the forefront of our minds and at our hearts. That she was always on me about, just be very careful about what you say and what people see you do, even though your motives may be entirely pure. And the biggest thing is walking it out. You have to. And for me, I get asked more questions about what is different about me and what do I believe and what do I stand for, really without saying anything, or really just not saying what they're saying is what it comes down to. And you drop subtle hints here and there when people ask you, hey, what are you about? How do you get into all this? I just recently wrapped up a World War II Navy movie with Tom Hanks. It's called Greyhound. It'll be out in May. And I do not doubt that God put me there for a reason, no more than a doubt that he put me on Talladega Nights for a reason, or Rainbow Tribe, which is the second film I did, for a reason. When we were doing Greyhound, we had to do boot camp with the Navy and Marines under Captain Dale Dye, who's this 74-year-old gung-ho, 3-time Purple Heart recipient. He was he pioneered like senior military advising for Saving Private Ryan, Band of Brothers, Platoon. So we're there and we're working under him and some other Navy guys that are recently retired or active duty, whatever. And we're talking. I was like, yeah, no, it's just a blessing to be here. And one of the guys was like, oh, so you're like part of the faith. And this guy, I love him to death. He brand new Christian. He probably did everything but put a needle in his arm. Super fried guy, but as precious as could be. Production didn't put him up. He needed a place to stay. He slept on my futon for the better part of 2 months in my hotel room. And I could count, I definitely could not count on both hands how many 2, 3 o'clock in the morning theological discussions we had from this brand new dad, brand new husband, brand new Christian, this ex-Special Forces vet, just sitting in the room, and it was crazy because I would wake up, in the morning, or I'd go to bed at night, and he'd be laying there with the sheets up to his neck. I mean, this huge, just jacked guy with like a dip in that was as big as my fist and a black facial mask on, and it was the wildest thing. But I don't doubt for a second that God put me there for sure,
right?
For Chief's sake. I wrapped up that shoot and had 2 or 3 people go, hey, you helped put a hope in humanity within me.
That's
because
cool.
I had lost it, and I don't know how to take that. Nor I don't think anyone should know how to take it when someone comes up to you and says, hey, you just gave me hope in humanity again.
Yeah.
When the second assistant director, who's essentially the boss, comes up and says, hey, I need you to pray for my sibling. She's sick. In passing, I didn't have a single Jesus-related conversation with any of these people at all, period. And so that was why, because that totally takes you by surprise, because you're here and you're working with Hanks, and you're working with Stephen Graham, who's a titan from Boardwalk Empire, and Elizabeth Shue from Adventures in Babysitting and Karate Kid. You're working with all these super high-brass people, and yet still you have someone come and say, hey, I need you to pray for my sister. In passing, I have to turn around and be like, excuse me, like,
you talking to me?
Yeah, it's like, did you just say that? And that is the coolest thing, but it's also an entirely different level of pressure. I feel like sometimes I feel more pressure from that end than the professional side of it, which is super, super high pressure, high stress, because you're working 13, 14, 15, pushing 16, 17 hours a day at times. And, if you don't get your crap right, there can potentially be, on days when we were filming on the USS Kidd, which is a World War II model destroyer, we were going through millions a day. Mm. You can't hold that up, you could, because you didn't, have your stuff to begin with. And that's super wild for me to just be in that situation. Do your deal, do your stuff, and you witness here and there by the things that you do and the things that you say, little by little. And that, ends up adding up through the thing. That's always huge. I'm always super grateful for that. Yeah. The hardest part is when you drop the ball.
Right.
Is when you do something you shouldn't, or you say something you shouldn't. Even, to an extent that if I was here, it leave people in my heart. And if I'm entirely blunt and say what I think, and not that it is wrong or can be viewed sideways in any way, but then in my heart here, when you're working in the middle of nowhere, where you've just barely met these guys, they don't. You have to work at that. It's a relationship thing. I can sleep on any of their couches. I could call them right now and say, hey, I'm in Baton Rouge, I'm in L.A., I'm in New York, I need a place to stay. No problem. They could do the same thing. Same thing for the Wimpy Kid guys, the Rainbow Tribe crew, anyone that for the most part we've ever worked with for an extended period of time. But these guys, you kind of, you did your thing. You walked it out. But they would call you on it if you screwed something up. We were eating dinner one night, and it was super late. We were probably about 11:30. And there was this lady. She was at the bar, and she had too much and passed out. Bam, pap, right there on the floor. And I thought that was the funniest thing in the world. Like, and I'm sorry.
As we laugh about it.
Yeah,
We don't think it's funny. Let's clarify.
Yeah. I laughed. I giggled. You would have thought that I murdered an infant in front of those guys.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow.
And everyone on that set the next morning knew that I had laughed at some poor intoxicated woman the night before. And that was, like, for me, it was like, what standard are you holding me to here? Because I'm not a perfect individual. But it's interesting to see the pedestal and the portrait that they put you on, they put you in, and how quick they'll jump on it,
Yeah.
when you fall off the wagon.
You talked about the Talladega Nights experience and some of the things you wouldn't say. In light of that, has there been work that has been presented to you, and just because of your faith belief, you said, I can't take that work? Or were they willing to modify some things in other settings to allow you to be in the script? Or there's just been settings where you just said, no, I can't do that?
Absolutely. You never want to walk in holier than thou at all. People, I mean, that's a bad vibe, whether you're a Christian or not. I mean, no one cares about that. For me, that's really difficult, because probably half the work that I get submitted on, or could get submitted on, I turn down. And that's not work itself. That's mainly auditions or stuff that I'm not comfortable with doing. Now you look at some of it that's okay. This is super sideways, but also there's a redemptive quality to that, and there's some grit here, and there is a story here that does make sense and lines up with some of the stuff that I believe in, what I do, even if it is sideways is the easiest way I can say it. That's always hard to kind of manage and sift through, because I work at Westmore Church of God here, and I would always like to be able to come back and do that. Whatever, I'm gone for 2.5 months, and we're doing a horror movie in Sacramento that's 3-4 weeks of night shoots, and you go, okay, I have to keep in line and hold to what's right for me. I was literally a couple doors down from where we're at right now in 108. I got a call from a producer who did Mother's Day with us. He said, hey, we're doing a movie. I'm shooting the script. Pick which part you want. And I never had that happen before in my life. I had some direct hires, but it was never, hey, I've got it. I'm shooting it to you. Pick which part you want. It was like, this man I had hardly ever met before, hardly knew him. Thank you, Jesus. Like, that's how it can happen. I might not have another job for 5 years, or I could get a call while we're sitting here.
Yeah.
That says, hey, we want you for 3 months in Russia. And on a plane, I'll go with bells on my feet. They shoot me the script. It's a horror film that I would normally have never given time of day. And it's exactly what a American horror film you'd think it'd be. It's, sex, drugs, rock and roll, minus rock and roll. And obviously something that I would never be comfortable with. And it hurt that I was even considering it, solely because had that not been the situation, had I not gotten a call that said, hey, I want you to be in this, I wouldn't have considered it otherwise. It was something that my mom and my dad would have seen it anyway, but it wasn't something that I was okay with my grandparents seeing. And that hurt me because I was considering it. And I prayed about it. I talked to Dr. Salyer a ton. He's the one I usually go to and stuff like that goes down. Obviously my family, Phil Cook, people that I look up to on a spiritual level, on a personal level. I'm meeting with Phil Cook about, okay, if this is to transpire, how do I need my classes to work while I'm gone, because I do school while I'm there. Got a call from the producers, hey, we're going to have a meeting. We just want to run through some stuff with you. I'm thinking, oh, God, I've got to sit here and just lay out this laundry list of things that I'm not okay with, and nobody wants to do that, because, again, that comes back to the holier-than-thou, stickler, we're better than you kind of mindset aspect of it. And I just was like, hey, Howard, Mr. Howard, there are a couple things that I'm not comfortable with. And they start they had the script out. They're like, okay, well, is it this? And they're flipping pages, and I can hear it in the background. I'm going, oh, Jesus, because now I have to, lay out again my laundry list in front of not just the man who's hiring me, but the entire, upper level staff. And I was like, oh, great, this is terrible. And I start talking about one or two things. They're like, oh, no one told you we're dropping it to PG-13, so we're taking out X, Y, Z, the whole deal. And I'm like, thank you, Jesus. I almost lost it right there in the conference room of the admin building. It's crazy how God works out and stuff like that. And then you get there, and that's a whole nother opportunity on something that I never would have considered otherwise. So it's definitely something that you have to walk out, and that you have to you have to know where you drop that moral compass at. And
Yeah.
some people have those in different places than others, and that's okay. You got to work out your own salvation.
Yeah.
The biggest thing that I struggle with is having to balance being in the world and not of it.
Yep.
Let me compliment you as a dad who has a girl who goes to Westmore, and you lead some of the youth worship there.
Yes, sir.
They know you as Grayson, not as a Fregley or the kid from Talladega Nights or any other movie. You have opened your life to those students, and they see that. They see the authenticity. They see the realness about you. And so when you tell stories like this about not compromising, it is redeeming to those of us who have students that you're impacting, or those students who are on campus we know.
Right.
And you're having an impact with, because I think you're in a bright spotlight with Hollywood and with movies, and not compromising there when there's a lot of money on the line, when you're making money. For the rest of us that aren't making a lot of money, we don't hit the bright spotlight, but yet we encounter the same sort of question: should I compromise what I believe in that situation? I think that's a huge value, Grayson, that you bring to the table. And I just want to commend you on it, because I know my daughter Kate speaks very highly of you and your work at Westmore, and so that's great to hear that you're not willing to bend on those things.
I think for me, is with a little bit of interaction I've had with the industry, and sitting here talking to you, I think the assumption is for a lot of people that you do compromise, that there's no way around being true to your faith and actually doing good work in the industry, right? So I think that's a false claim, number one. I think number two, if we were to look at it from a biblical perspective, is this not what Paul did? Did he not go among the Gentiles? Did he not go to Greek cultures and debate on their gods and stuff like that? So as much as I would like to say, I think you're kind of an apostle in this industry. I'm not trying to cast out titles or whatever. I'm just saying. I think
Hollywood's definitely like Corinth, though.
Yeah,
Hollywood and Corinth have a lot of
Hollywood
similarities.
and Corinth have a lot of similarities. But I think for you and how you approach your work, I think you're really an apostle in an industry that needs apostles. And so bringing that truth, bringing that love, bringing that grace, again, I think, as Jeff said, is commendable. And so let's talk about celebrities for a second, because in our culture, celebrities sort of run the show, right? Politics, government, whatever you want to talk about, culture, fashion, they sort of run the show a little bit. And that's cool. I mean, that's what they do, and so that's all right. But in the church, I feel like we're starting to really see this celebrity mentality enter the church. I'm not advocating for or against. I'm just saying, is there a place in the church for celebrities, and how do we sort of balance that conversation with the gospel?
I think there's a place for everything. If I can be there and I can do what I'm doing and still stay true to it and maintain some level of success, I think you can do just about anything. As far as celebrities in the church is something you have to be careful with, and you have to walk that line fairly steady, solely because you are in place already on a pedestal.
Right.
Does that make sense? I mean, if you're known for worldwide for being a man of God, then you better not botch it. And
that's the plan.
You better not botch it. And that's the thing. I mean, obviously, not that I don't want to be known as a man of God. Like when I kick over and what's written on my tombstone, I want that to be in there somewhere. I want to be a good dad. I want to all these things. That being at the top of the list. I think there's definitely a spot for celebrities there, whether they're celebrities within the church world, and that's the only world that there's celebrities in, or outside of it. But again, I think that's a question of you've got to walk out your own salvation, and that's between you and the good Lord. But that isn't something that anyone, and not that they take it lightly. That's not what I'm saying at all. But that you should take lightly, because that's some heavy stuff, and you don't want to get in there and botch it.
Right.
Because if that's what you are known for, I don't think you should be. I'm trying to think how to say this. For me, I'm known for being an actor. And when people meet me, they understand what I'm about. Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah.
If people know you as a pastor or a worship leader, that's what you should be about. That should be, your main goal. That's what you should live out. You just have to be careful, because if that's something that you're on a pedestal for that particular reason, that is what you are known for, you have to have your stuff right, and you have to keep it there. And I think that's probably more pressure than not that it's worth, but I think we probably put more pressure there. I feel like you're under more pressure by Christians.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, that took me a minute to work around. That's what I'm trying to say. I feel like Christian people will be, much harder on you than the world would be. And that's hard, because we have a really good record of shooting or wounded.
Yes, we do.
And that's
yes, we
And
do.
maybe wounding them to begin with.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Cutting their legs off.
winging them and wounding them to begin with. And I feel like there's more grace for people who are already established in whatever industry they are, opposed to those who are not. They're established in the church world. But I mean, that just comes back to, be careful if you're teaching the gospel, because if you do it wrong, how much more is going to come down on you for that?
Right. So you mentioned being known as an actor. What some people may not know about you is you have a heart for music.
Yes,
You're
sir.
part of our Lead You worship here on campus. You lead worship at a local church for the high school group. How did music become a part of your life?
So, my dad sings in church. My mom sings in church. Again, grew up super small town, like 9,000 people. I sang like I Can Only Imagine when I was 3 by myself in like a pair of snakeskin boots and a vest, because I wanted to be George
You
Strait.
wanted to be George Strait.
I wanted to
Listen,
be George
where
Strait.
do we get the footage of this stuff?
Yeah,
Where do we
I
get
have
the
it.
car
I have
sale
it somewhere.
footage
Oh
and
yeah.
the-
No, when I was 2 years old, I would walk around saying, "Hi, my name is Grayson Russell George Strait." Like I used to introduce myself. People like they thought like I lived on a farm, like we had cows and horses, and I'm like, "Yo, I could hit Walmart with a rock." Like
Yes.
I live like in the middle of town. But music's always been a huge part of my life. It way before, I say way, it's only like 3 years before I started doing any form of acting. But that's always been very much ingrained in my being, and just in my family. I mean, I come from a family of entertainers to an extent, even though they are accountants and farmers
Sure.
and construction workers, and they know how to have a good time, and they're super joyful people. But I've always done music. When I was in 2nd grade, I had a band that sang solely Bee Gees music.
You are a metropolitan man.
How do you even know who
solely,
the Bee Gees
solely
are,
Bee
man?
Gees music and "Have a Nice Day" by Bon Jovi. That was the only exception that we could.
Of all
that
the
we
Bon
could-
Jovi
of all the
songs,
Bon
Have a
Jovi
Nice
songs,
Day.
that was it. That
I
was
mean,
it.
Living on a Prayer, Dead or
so
Alive.
I guess stole my dad's. Mom got Dad like this Bee Gees number ones, whatever CD for Christmas, which would have been in about 2004. And I grabbed it and was like, "This is the best thing I have ever heard."
Bee Gees,
and
man.
so, I mean, you're not just looking at Staying Alive, but you're looking, Night Fever, More Than a Woman,
Yeah.
How Deep Is Your Love, all kinds of stuff that I was like totally just ate it up. And for me, I was very down the line, down the middle. I love Lord of the Rings, and for me that meant I'm not into Harry Potter or Star Wars. I love the Bee Gees. That means I don't listen to the Beatles. I love George Strait. That means I don't listen to George Jones. Like,
Oh, come on
that
now.
I was
Wow.
very,
We're not gonna start a fist fight on
I
this-
was
on the show
very,
here.
I was very strict. Just I don't know why I was 7. I was like, "This is what I believe, and you're not changing it." But we would be on set doing Talladega Nights. Again, I was in 2nd grade doing that, and Will and Adam McKay would come up and just start like singing these like homemade, like made up Bee Gees songs, like where I'm the long lost, like I can't remember what, like Larry Gibb or whatever, and just
my
like
goodness.
and just like start making up. So music has always been a huge part of my life. The church music thing really didn't roll around until I was about 11 or 12. I started leading worship for our youth at home, and I did that for seven or so years all throughout high school, and then came to Lee and never really. I knew that worship music would be a part of my life, But again, like I had a band in second grade that sang Bee Gees music, and I have a band now that I've always wanted to be like, okay, we do the Black Crowes and Dave Matthews and Stevie Wonder and Michael Jackson, all kinds of stuff. Like I love doing that. Like I love that side of it too. And God kind of he made me mad a little bit with the West stuff.
That happens.
Yeah, that happens. Jesus will make you mad.
There's a country song in that somewhere.
Yeah. Because again, like I knew worship music would be a part. I didn't realize that it would be such a big part of my life, and I didn't plan on for sure doing that for the rest of my life. Of course, like acting is always at the forefront, and that's what I want to do. But I had no intention of getting plugged in, near as tight as I had been with Westmore or with Lee U. I knew that I would be involved to an extent, but now I can't see my life without it. And for a while, that was kind of frustrating. Not because I didn't love it, because that wasn't what I had in mind. That wasn't what I had planned. Right. And I love working with kids, and by kids, gosh, I mean I'm 21. I'm still a kid. I'm working with high schoolers that I still very much remember what it was like. And in middle school too. And that's the thing that I value is sitting a bunch of guys down and being like, look, this is what I did. This worked. This is what I did, and it did not work, and you should never even entertain the thought.
Don't do that.
And don't do it. And I'm young enough that they respect it.
Sure.
And that's what I appreciate is watching kids grow spiritually, and not so much knowing that I was responsible, because I'm not, but knowing that you played a part in helping somebody, period. Whether that's on a set and they're saying, hey, you helped like me hope in humanity again, which is huge.
That's a strong statement.
Yeah, it's a huge statement. Or to kids that, I leave for 2 months and I go and work on a film, so I'm leaving all the praise band kids, I'm leaving all the youth guys to, they do their thing and they bring in someone to help. But you have those moments where I come back the first Wednesday night and they've found their feet. They've had to figure out, okay, how do we do this? Because, our, facilitator is not here. And you look at students that are now here at Lee that have found where they're supposed to be. And, you can't help but think, man, I help contribute to that. And again, not that I'm responsible by any means, because there's so many people who pour into these kids, period, not just at Westmore, everywhere across the map. That's my favorite thing to do, is just sit and go, man, look at how far this particular individual has come. Yeah. Not just musically. You look physically, emotionally, spiritually, like that is huge. And also you turn that inside and go, man, look how far these kids have brought you.
Absolutely.
Because it's a whole different level of accountability. Yeah. Because again, it kind of comes back to the kind of Christian celebrity stuff is, all right, you tell these kids what you believe and you pour into them, as a pastor, as a minister of music, whether that's a celebrity one or not, they expect you to walk it out because you're trying to make them walk it out. Yeah. You're just like, all right, well, if I have to quit doing X, Y, Z and whatever, well then by God you do too. Yeah. And there's an accountability there, there's a responsibility there that I've always loved, because especially coming off to college, Lee is a Christian liberal arts institution, and there's that, and you have the community covenant that you follow, but you can do what you want to do and you can be what you want to be whether your mama knows it or not. And there's an accountability with not so much leading worship, but just being active in some form of youth ministry, whether that's an institution or not. Yeah. That there's a responsibility there that, what, I can't fly off the handle right now. Right.
I'm actually old enough to remember the Bee Gees.
Okay.
On 8-track, bro.
Oh,
okay?
Snap.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
I'm going to I'm not. I'm going to say I'm not.
No, I had the 8-track. My parents had the 8-track Bee Gees, Village People, whole 9 yards, right? So I'm that old. Yeah. But for Jeff and I, the whole reason why we're here, the reason why we created this show, was because we feel very much from our own experiences as students who graduated from Lee several years ago, but from our own experiences, we feel this tremendous call, this responsibility to engage and be a part of the stories and the narratives of students' lives, just like you. Yeah. And I love the fact that you brought this up, because the whole point of what we're trying to do here is engage in conversations that are encouraging, are helpful for leaders, as well as the people that they're leading when it comes to this particular age group. I have a strong conviction that you should be able to serve where you learn. So as students are coming in to Lee University from literally all over the world, they're coming into Lee University, my hope, and I know Jeff's hope is as well, that we actually get them plugged into a local church somewhere. To be a part of that community, be a part of the fabric of that church, because it matters. It not only matters to that church, it matters to their experience while they're here at Lee. Because if they don't learn the discipline now, as one of the other guests on the show said, if they don't learn the discipline now, it's certainly not going to change once they graduate. So you, of all people, have enough good reason not to be involved in a local church. Bro, you're a celebrity. Right? You're in movies, you know, people know your face. I mean, you could be annoyed with autographs. I mean, the kids could, you understand what I'm trying to say, right? Yes, so you get that piece of it. I mean, that's your world. But what is that driving thing in you that says, no matter who I am professionally in acting or whatever, no matter how many films I make, there's that value of staying connected to a local body, a community of believers that strengthens your faith, that impacts you, that shapes you in ways that nothing else can. So there's that piece, but man, peer to peer, because that's the way the change is going to happen. Yes, it doesn't matter how many college students listen to this podcast, and we hope there's a ton, but really, it's peer to peer. That's going to be the real change factor. So you're here. You're still a student. What would you say to incoming freshmen? What would you say to current seniors? Get involved in a local church. Do something bigger than yourself. I mean, just what is that piece for you that's driving you to do that? And how can we help others do the same?
I think it's really easy, especially as freshmen or, you know, outgoing seniors, to even with all the wonderful different things that Lee has going on, different, whether they're clubs, organizations, what have you, there's a very real danger of isolating yourself, even with all the things going on. And for me, I lived in BLB my first year. I loved living in a dorm because there was always something going on. Sure. We had this guy that played the fiddle that was like from the mountains of Appalachia, that was raised by his grandmother. Wow. And I would be like in the bed at like 4 a.m, and you would hear like legitimate mountain music, like getting it, like in the cluster, and it's craziness, and it's wonderful, and it's all fun. But even in the madness, it's so easy to just step back, and that's okay to an extent. Not that I'm saying you have to be involved in everything, because you can't overcommit. And I feel like that's something also very easy for freshmen to do. For me, it was okay. Come in. I want to do a Greek club. I want to do a choir. I want to do SLC. I'm doing a sport. I'm doing this, that, and the other. And you get spread out over so many things that you all want to do so well, that you really end up losing a whole lot of yourself in that. And I mean, it's the same danger that you look at with people who lead worship on a full-time basis or pastor on a full-time basis, is that you're not so much getting poured into because you're pouring into other people. That's a huge little bit of advice for me. That's like, okay, Grayson, you need to learn how to say no to some things. And then, you know, as you progress in the years that you're here, you figure out what you really can't handle. Because for me, you know, if I'm around a group of people, whether they're, you know, Lee students or not, whatever's going on, I know what I can handle. As far as academically, socially, you know, what's going on, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, I know what I can handle and what I can't. And you have to figure that out. And I feel like if you are overstressed, overstretched, it's harder to do that. It's harder to take care of yourself. And that's the biggest thing for me, and that driving force is, okay, some things I have to limit myself to because I have to be able to take care of me. And that's not so much in a selfish way, but it's so that I can continue doing the things that I do and do them to the extent that I do them. I mean, with Westmore, there's a ton of stuff they've got going on. And I love it. I love that there's so many things going on, but also it's like, okay, I have to take care of my spiritual life and myself before I ever attempt to, help these other kids or help anyone else. Seniors, I'm about to be out in May, and there's plenty of things that I wish I did. There's plenty of conversations I wish I had, people that I wish I had spoken to, people that, I wish I had opened myself up to. And the reason I probably didn't was because I got into this, that, and the other and just, made myself an island.
Right.
And that I wish I had. And there are relationships that I could have formed, that I could have invested in, that I didn't. If I could turn around and trade places with any of the freshman guys that are in BOB right now or Medlin or wherever they're at, I would. No questions asked. Because there's a life there. There's a newness to coming into this new place and meeting all these new people that are all extremely genuine individuals. And it's visible. And that was the crazy thing for me, was coming and saying, oh man, I don't have to figure out how to work the politics of these relationships.
Right.
I don't have to try to read people. And I've always been really bad about preconceived notions. And part of that's because, I'm an actor. And I've grown up in a fairly vicious career.
Sure.
To where I have to be able to not only size up the character, of the individual that I'm portraying, but also the people that I'm working with. And you have to figure out who's in your corner. And so coming to Lee, it wasn't so much on that. I wasn't so tight with it. We had guys that would come in that would, look this way or look that way. And I go, okay, he's, I put him in his file or in his place. We had one guy that that I thought was the biggest redneck in the world. And that's coming from me, which is a lot. And, you look and I realize that he's a music biochem double major and the man's a genius.
Wow. And
you go, I pegged you wrong. And that was a relationship that I could have invested in on the front end that I wrote off.
Yeah.
And there are things that I wish I did that I haven't. So for me, I feel like my senior year is a lot of catch up, and just trying to get back, get everything out of it, squeeze the life out of it, because in May I won't be here anymore.
Yeah, it happens once, that's for sure.
You get one shot at it. Unless you don't, then take it for two.
Then you get old.
And then you come back.
Then you get old and you come back.
And you're like, hey, I'm still cool. And they're like, no, you're not.
Like, they know. We
you're
attempt
not.
to be cool, but no, we recognize we're not. So that's why we have guys like you on the podcast. So, you're an Alabama guy. Now, the Lee is part of the Church of God, and it's sponsored by the Church of God. But what brought you to Lee? Why a Christian college?
I did not plan on Lee at all. Whatsoever. I had a full ride to do our local community college at home. I was going to do it online. That way, if I get called to wherever I got to go work, whether that calls tomorrow or 4 years from now, I can do it. No question. I won't have to worry about academics. It's online. I can still be there. I had done Teen Talent. Again, I grew up in the Church of God, so Danny Murray usually cornered me a little bit and was like, hey, not corner me. That's a bad way of putting it.
No, he probably
did.
I know Danny.
So those that don't know, listen to podcast. Danny Murray leads Voices of Lee, the local a cappella choir here on campus.
Yeah. So I met him through Teen Talent and was recruited for Voices. So there was always a draw there because of just the excellence that's associated with it. Not that I'm that caliber by any means, but I knew that my dad always describes Danny as the Nick Saban of collegiate singing. Period.
You're probably right. That's a great analogy.
So for me, it was like, all right, cool. And I would love the training and love the experience. That was always in the back of my head. Mom ended up just enrolling me kind of off the cuff into Summer Honors, which is the summer program they have here for juniors and seniors. Mainly because I had come up to speak at Westmore through a completely unrelated event. that was through like Kids Fest and some random stuff. So I came in and spoke at Westmore and did some stuff with their kids. Like I was a sophomore in high school with no intention of coming to Lee. I stayed with Dr. Andrew Lee and his wife, Esmeralda, who both go to Westmore. Dr. Lee is one of the English professors here on campus. And they're like, hey, you should come. You should do a campus. And I came and looked at it and thought it was cool. But again, at that point, I was a sophomore. I'm going to act, whether that's go to L.A. or Atlanta. I knew that would be a big step, whatever it was. But I knew that time was coming. Did summer honors. It set the hook, did exactly what it was supposed to do. Threw my life kind of up in a whirlwind because all my mom's family live on the same road. We can hit each other with rocks. Like
a lot of rock throwing.
A lot of rock
maybe
throwing.
You have.
Yeah, and maybe we have. Maybe we have. But no, we're all super close, and I never thought about leaving that. I always assumed, and the great thing I feel about going off and acting was that even though I came up in a small town, I was able to get out and kind of see a lot of different things, good and bad and ugly. And once I came home, all my buddies were like, I can't wait to get out of here. And for me, I realized, shoot, Clanton isn't all that bad. I never thought I would leave. So coming to Lee was a huge decision. I don't think I actually made the call until about 3 weeks before move-in day. Like it was right there up to it. Again, kind of goes back to Phil Cook was super adamant, that they would work with my schedule should that happen, which that was what I needed. If that wasn't an option, then I couldn't be here because acting's what I want to do. It's what I want to continue to pursue. And the faculty have always been super great. I've done 2 films during the school year since I've been here. The first one being Apparition, which is a horror film that'll be out. We don't have a release date on that yet. And then Greyhound, which is the World War II, and that'll be out in May. Both of which I was able to keep pretty much all my hours that I had. I had to drop one science class because I had a lab, and I,
can't be here for a lab.
I can't be here for a lab, but I can't have my Bunsen burner going in the back of like stage 8.
But that would be awesome.
that would be wild. Lee's just willingness to work, I feel like with my schedule, and that's not just. I don't feel like that's solely because I'm an actor.
Sure.
Because the thing that's so special to me about this is I have the relationships with my professors that I do, and I know that they have those same relationships with every other student. It has nothing to do with the fact that the things that I've done, what I've come from. I know that plays a part, and I understand that maybe on initially, but I know that when I have essential life crisis that comes through that says, hey, we want you to do this film that I would never be comfortable with otherwise, I call my mom. I called Dr. Salyer. And I called Dr. Cook, called Phil Cook. And that really had very little to do with academics. Those are the people that I looked up to in their field, but so much so more on just a personal spiritual level, saying, hey, this is what is going on. What do you think? Because I need help. Because this is something that I can't do this on my own, because I need to figure this out. Because again, I want to be able to come back to a world that I know and that I'm familiar with that will also still respect me for going and doing the things I'm going and doing, regardless of the nature of the film, of the project. Because so oftentimes, like you said, all we hear are horror stories, and we push that and we say, all right, Hollywood is, the
Antichrist.
The Antichrist.
Evil.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you don't understand there's a lot of good that goes on in there.
Right.
But if you don't ever allow people to go in there and do it, then that's all it'll ever be. And that's the hard part, is going, okay, I know I'm going to get criticized for X, Y, and Z from the people that I love and that I work with on a regular basis, which again goes back to kind of the celebrity Christian deals. You got to know what you're stepping into there, because Christians are super critical people.
Yeah.
Myself included, and that's hard. But you have to understand that, I know that this is what I'm supposed to do. And I'm very thankful that I know that, because I know, especially as either graduating seniors in college or high school or incoming freshmen, you're trying to kind of figure that out. I've been able to know that since I was 7.
Yeah.
Thank you, God. That's not a question that I struggle with. Now, when I don't work for 3 years, that's hard.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a time between my freshman year of high school and the first week of my senior year, I didn't work a day. I auditioned my tail off for 3 years, didn't get a thing. And you begin to question, okay, well, is this what I should do? Is this supposed to happen? Was this only for a time? And you kind of feel robbed to an extent, because it's like, well, crap, I thought this was what I was, supposed to do. You just have to stick to your guns and, do what is right, regardless of, public opinion.
Right.
Definitely take that into account. I'm not going to, say entirely disregard it. But you have to know where you drop your moral compass, and you have to be okay with that.
Yeah.
My hardest thing professionally is when I'm on set and I say something or do something, within a scene. Maybe we don't have time to finish it. Maybe I don't get to take that character, that role in that moment to where I want it to go. And we leave, we move on. And that particular scene, the dinner table scene from Talladega Nights, the freckle stuff from Wimpy Kid, those two things I know for sure will outlive me. Film, music, politics, the work you do will outlive you.
Yeah.
Especially in those industries for sure. Now, my dad's always done construction work. He builds houses. That might outlive him. But his face isn't stuck to it.
Right.
His voice isn't attached to it. His ideas aren't attached to it. So for me, that is the hardest thing, is leaving a room full of super talented individuals where a ton of blood and sweat and tears and funds are on the line, and you go, crap, I could have done that better.
Yeah.
And you don't have a chance. You don't get the chance to fix it. And that's hard. That is easily one of the worst feelings I've had in my life. Not that you walk into something entirely unprepared, but that that, man, I could have done that better, or I could have done it, this way or that. And that's where I have to just lean on God. No, okay. I know I'm here, regardless of the literal hell that this set may or may not be right now. I know I'm here for a purpose.
Right.
And whether that's to let this, Special Forces vet sleep on my couch,
with a mask on and everything.
With a facial mask on and everything.
With that black charcoal mask.
Yeah. Or whether that's directly witness to people. When I was 9 years old, we were working on a film in the mountains of California, middle of nowhere, Big Bear, Lake Gregory area, the middle of nowhere. I had just done Talladega Nights a couple years before. Huge budget film, obviously, huge social, cultural impact there. I'm doing this next film is independent, super low budget, entirely on a different end from what I'm accustomed to, or was at that point in time. We go, God, why are we here? Because this is not going how we thought it was. And literally, as we're praying that prayer, me and my mom in our hotel room in the mountains, this kid that we were working with, literally 4 doors down from us, was giving his life to Christ because one of our other cast members' dad was a pastor and had led him to Jesus. And the next morning we wake up and he goes, hey, man, I got saved. And it's like, okay, that's a direct sign here.
Yeah. Right.
But then you turn around and it's like, oh, well, man, you should, and I'm like 9 at this point, it's like, all right, so you should start going to a church and, you should do this and that and get connected and plug in. And he turns around and he goes, well, okay, well, how much does it cost?
Oh my goodness.
And you sit back and go, is this how people view the church?
Church. Yeah.
How much does salvation cost? To an extent, you look at it, and fleshly, it's cost everything.
Right.
To walk this out, you sacrifice yourself daily.
Right.
But he looks at it from how much does it cost to be a Christian? How much do I have to spend to be here as a child?
Yeah.
And, part of me wants to look and laugh and sit there at it, which is fine, and I feel like that's totally natural and rational. But I knew without a shadow of a doubt that that's where I needed to be. No more than I'm supposed to be right here at this table.
Yeah.
I don't doubt it, and that's the beauty of it all. And I appreciate it.
I love this idea of sending that you're talking about, and I think you're absolutely right. Erwin McManus, Mosaic Church, L.A., obviously very influential in that culture. He talks a lot about, and has for many years, he talks a lot about the church should be owning the artistic expressions that we enjoy. And I think historically we could easily point that out between the cathedrals and, the great artists, Michelangelo, Da Vinci, or whatever, right? He talks a lot about that we should be owning that. And I think for us as believers, as Christians, that's been a challenge. Number one, to just engage the culture. But number two, it's also been a challenge for us to just send people to take the risk in the culture. And I think here at Lee, our motto is, raising up Christian leaders for a complex world. And so for us to be sending students such as yourself or others out into this world to lead in these capacities is critical. I think that is the mission of the church. I think, we've kind of inverted it to a consumption. We've got to get people in, right? You know what I'm saying? Like we've got to get more people in, but in reality, what we need to be doing is sending more people out, right? So help us conquer some of those fears, right? I mean, so when you engage in a culture that is so radically different from the church, Westmore and West Hollywood are as far apart as you could possibly imagine.
Absolutely.
Okay?
I have friends in both.
Okay, I do too. I do too. So
I'm left out. I have friends in West Hollywood.
No, I got friends in West Hollywood and I got friends in Westmore, right? Two radically different conversations. But at the same time, the call to go still stands. It doesn't matter where you're from. And stories like this with this kid and the concepts that he had about church. I mean, how would you encourage a pastor? How would you encourage a pastor and say, hey, here's who I am. This is what I'm doing. Here's how your students, your church can make a difference. Like, is there something you could, and I know I'm asking you questions off the cuff that you probably didn't prepare for, but conversation is just too good. So how would you encourage a pastor to take that risk to send people?
I think the most important thing, and I mean it goes back to, and this is solely from personal experience for me, is living it out. It's not about, for me, it's about the little things. They may, in the morning before I go to work, whether that's at 5:45, 4:30 in the morning, or 8 o'clock at night, and we go in for a 13-hour night shoot, is, you prepare in private. You be sure all your ducks in a row. I mean, for me, I'll I'm taking a shower, I'll crank up my Bethel or whatever. Or whether that's, okay, I'm in the trailer and I'm doing it. And, you have these little subtle things. It's not about beating people over the head with it. It's not about, for sure, I think our biggest misconception is it's not calling them out for what's wrong. It's not calling them out for, yo, you shouldn't be smoking that right now. Now, you can, and you can do that in a way that is not condemning. It's not super judgmental, because that's the kind of, oh shoot, I can't think of the word. That's how a lot of people take us for.
Right, right. That's the perception they have.
The perception is how they perceive us. But you live it out, and you love people. You love people who for the most part don't understand what love is, and we as Christians do, on a much greater level, on a much greater scale than those who don't believe. I understand that there is a God who sent His Son to die for me, to give His life up for me, so that I, in all my craziness, can have eternal life, can live this thing out, and can help others to attain that. You just have to be willing to love them, whatever that is, and whatever that looks like, and just live it out, and that will speak for itself. You don't have to beat people over the head. Just walk it out.
In this role, or this idea of being sent that Rob's talked about, and I can't imagine being your mama, because she was sending you to a culture that was obviously at times counter to what was going on in the home. How did she sort of guide you, or what were her prayers in sending you to an environment that was what we would say, quote unquote, worldly in the Hollywood? What kind of influence did she have in that?
Psalms 91. We prayed that every day, every morning before I would go to work. She was with me for 10 films, probably all 10 of them. Right before we did Talladega Nights, the youth pastor at my home church in Alabama did a little message on Psalms 91. For those who live in the shelter of the Most High will find rest in the shadow of the Almighty. This I declare of the Lord, He alone is my refuge and my place of safety. He is my God, and I'm trusting in Him. For He will rescue you from every trap and protect you from the fatal plague. On and on and on and on and on, whatever. Recite the whole chapter. We did our best to abide under the shadow of the Almighty, knowing that, all right, these evils will not touch us, for He sends His angels to protect us wherever we go, because He sent us here. He sent us here for a purpose, and you just kind of have to sit back and breathe, even though this is hard and it's different and it's wild and we don't understand what's going on. I think my biggest thing I feel like I've learned this at Lee, is to sit back and know that it is okay that I do not know what's going on right now. It is okay to just pull back and be like, you know what? I don't know what's going on, and that's okay, and it's not my job to. All right, X, Y, and Z are happening. I'm a people pleaser by nature. Is learning that, you know what, you can't do everything. You can do it to the extent that you have influence, and that's it. You don't know everything, and it's going to be okay. Sit back and breathe, because you're going to live.
Yeah.
It's not going to kill you. My mom played. That's the only reason why I'm able to do what I'm doing, is she was there and she toughed it out. And, when I, as a kid, did something or said something sideways that it wasn't, because I'm not perfect, she let me know it. And she was my mom. There was one time we were doing one of the Wimpy Kid movies, and she had said, hey, don't play this game while you're at school, because we have school on set. And I don't think I've ever told anybody this story. And my teacher was like, Natalie Smith, she was our teacher through the whole thing. She was like, yeah, you can play if you finish your work. And my mom came in the schoolroom. Okay, so my teacher had said I could. My mom said I couldn't. And as my mom was walking up, Karan Brar, he does a ton of Disney stuff. He just did Jesse and Bunked. He goes, hey, Grayson, your mom's coming. And I was like, cut the game off. But it was little stuff. At that point in time, all the moms were like, he had Karan watching out so his mom wouldn't see him playing what it was, even though that wasn't what was happening at all. She called me on it.
Yeah.
It's like, this is what happened. Even though that was okay for you to be playing it because Natalie said you could. It's all about perception.
Yeah.
And so, not that I had to have everything perfect. Again, we got to loosen up a little bit. Not that we should let everything fly. That's not what I'm saying. But she kept me on my toes. She's the reason why I'm here. The reason, the house that I grew up in, the faith that my family integrated into everything, is the only reason why I'm here. Because that's what's, I don't want to say grounded. That sounds conceited. But that's the only thing that's held me to what I know. That established everything that I do now. I feel like that's the only reason that I have underwent, whatever, the spiritual growth that I have had.
Sure.
Is because I had that foundation. Because if I didn't have it, Katie barred the door. Like, there's no telling what I would be doing, because I've been blessed with a ton of different off-the-wall opportunities, whether that's 3 years doing Wimpy Kid movies in Vancouver, or hanging on a Navy cruiser destroyer boat with Tom Hanks for 2 months. you have to be solid in what you know, and that's attribute all that to my folks.
I think we need to shout out to Mama. She did a pretty
Mama
good job.
did a pretty good job.
Yeah, Mama did a good job.
But I think it also talks about the importance of having incredible mentors in your life and just people who are willing to invest in you. And some people have that, some people don't. And I think part of the struggle and the journey for us is helping those who don't have it find it. Right? And that's good. That's good friendship. That's good leadership. So, man, we got time for one more question.
Fire away.
Can we do 2 questions?
We got 2 questions?
Okay, yeah, I'm going to do one before you do one.
Okay.
So you're from Alabama.
From Alabama.
War Eagle or Roll Tide?
Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.
So here's the thing. Both my parents went to AUM. My dad's an Alabama fan. Mom's an Auburn fan. My uncle's an Auburn fan. That was like...
How do they say married?
Yeah, for real. So number one is like, all right, are you saved? Like, do you know Christ? And then the second question is Auburn or Alabama. That's it. That's always the follow-up question. It's like, all right, we have dunked you. Now who are you going to pull for?
Where's your allegiance?
Now where's your allegiance? No, I mean, I was like 4 or 5, and I was like, all right, well, Auburn's a city, and Alabama's a state. And a state's bigger than a city, so they should win more. And I'm pulling for Alabama.
I like
but that was
logic.
during like Mike Shula years, so we were horrible. But I mean, I didn't know what was going on.
So the Lord's redemption.
The Lord, yes, He is.
That's right. Okay, so last question here. What is the greatest lesson you've learned in college outside of the classroom?
Oh man, oof, that's a big one.
And it can be something practical, like don't stick your finger in a fire or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't have to be anything deep, but
yeah, it doesn't have to be anything deep. That it is all right to not be okay sometimes.
That's great.
it's okay not to be okay.
It's okay not to be, and I know that's fairly elementary, but a lot of I know Lee students and staff and faculty included. You grow up in this Christian environment your whole life, or maybe not. And it's
Right.
like, okay, you understand the pressure and the stakes that, okay, I need to have my life in order. No more than Westmore with the kids. But that you know what you're not going to all the time. You're not going to have everything right. You will slip up and you will fall flat on your face. And that's okay. That happens. I mean, my favorite thing, and this is on a little practical level, is when we're doing music, whether it's wherever, and somebody screws up. I love it when I screw up, solely because I'll never do that again. And you learn something from it. Okay, crap, I shouldn't have handled that like that. Well, now I know.
Now you know.
Now I know, and that it's okay to not be okay, and just to have the integrity, and I think the strength, because that takes a lot, especially just growing up in this environment, to go, I shouldn't have done that, or this, or whatever, and I know that, and I'm not all right, and I can't do this by myself. That's my big one. That's my biggest takeaway out of all of it.
That's
awesome.
Really good. It's so freeing. I hope that all the students are listening, and even adults take that away, that it's okay to not be okay. I think that's an important lesson. So,
Race fans, Grayson Russell.
Thank y'all.
Man,
y'all
it's been exciting to have you on the show.
Yes, sir.
And as we always say here at the Collectives Co. podcast, you have a seat at the table, man.
Sweet. Well, I appreciate it.
And we appreciate you. So how can people stay in touch with you? Go see Greyhound.
Go see Greyhound. Greyhound like the bus. Greyhound like the dog comes out May 8th, 2020.
May 8th, 2020. Go see Greyhound. Tom Hanks movie. Grayson's in. It's going to be amazing. Yeah. Social media. How can we stay in touch?
Grayson C. Russell. So Grayson C. Russell.
Grayson C. Russell. All right, man. Hey, blessings to you, bro. We're proud of you. We are so proud of you that you're part of our family. And just proud of the work that you're doing in an incredible environment. And blessings to you, my friend. Excited to see what God has for your future.
Thank you, guys.
Awesome.
Thanks so much. Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of the Collectives Co. podcast. Would you do us a favor and subscribe, rate, and review, and share this on social media so this content can reach other great leaders?